Fine.
All right, welcome everyone to the Writers Bloc Podcast. It is a joy and an honor to introduce to you Mary DeMuth today. She is going to talk with us about the agent and author relationship. Kind of a fun tidbit about her is she wears both hats. And so she can speak to both things. But Mary, I am pulling up my notes. She is a literary agent, a daily podcaster of the Pray Every Day show. She is a scripture artist, a speaker, and an author of over 50 books. So, Mary, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get started as a writer, and how did that transition happen going from writer to agent and mentor?
It's an exceptionally long story, but I've always been writing, and part of the reason that I wrote was just a very dysfunctional upbringing where I had one of my parents who was not a truth teller. And so it started to make me a little crazy. So I would write in a journal the things that the parent would say. And then when they would come back and say, I never said that, I could prove, not to them necessarily, because I didn't want to get in trouble, but to myself that I wasn't going crazy. So it was part of my coping with um, a lack of truth in my home. So that was kind of the beginning of just writing all the time in little journals and diaries and things like that. And then in college, I started off as a math major, which shows you the two sides of my brain. So I've got this wildly creative side that writes fiction by the seat of her pants, no outline, just come to the page. And then I've got this highly organized nonfiction side of me that outlines the heck out of it and writes a book in 5 weeks. So you see kind of both sides going on. But I started as on that side. I was starting as a math major. I love math. There's an answer to every problem. And then, but I couldn't handle it anymore because I was like, I need to write. So I became an English major. And it wasn't until I had my first child in the early 90s that I just was like, I have to be a writer. It just, birthing the child meant birthing books. And so I spent about a decade writing millions of words that were unpublished. And eventually my husband and I, we moved to the Dallas area. We're originally from the Pacific Northwest. And he was going to go to seminary, which he did. And during that time was when I kind of said, okay, I've been writing for all this time. I've definitely been paying my dues. And I found a mentor, found a writers group. And within a couple of years, I had a literary agent and signed my first contract in 2004. And then I've been writing 2 to 3 books a year since then, hence the number of books that I have. Mostly traditionally published, some self-published, some collaboratively written, some ghost written. Um, and so that's been my trajectory. In the past couple years, about 4 years now, I felt like my way of giving back to the community was to constantly teach new writers. I hold an intensive couple weeks every year in Europe. And so I've always just naturally gravitated toward pouring into writers. And I felt like the next step, and I felt like the Lord was saying the next step is to become a literary agent. And so I've been doing that for a couple of years now. I have about 40 clients. I'm on my own, marydemuth.literary.com, and I help my authors work toward traditional publishing, and then we help each other launch our books, and it's a very collaborative space. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I love how you saw and I can imagine that even the work that you do is marrying those two sides of your brain, the very mathematical, analytical side with the very creative writing side, and how the Lord kind of worked those things together into the work that you're doing. And so love that. Yeah, you talked a little bit about mentoring writers. What does that look like to you? And when you say that, like, is that a very like task specific mentorship, like where you're helping writers like write their books, or is it beyond that maybe?
It's taken a lot of forms over the years. So it's taken the form of me directly teaching at writers conferences. It's taken the form of creating mastermind groups where I am in there with them. It has taken the form of editing people and helping them with their pieces. We have a local writers group where I do that still in my locale, where we just go through and we edit each other's pieces and help each other have stronger verbs and stronger nouns. So, and then in the intensives, it's definitely very hands-on. I take up to about 15 writers at a time, and I download to them everything I know about publishing and writing. And so that's very connected and relational. And then in terms of agenting, that I'm always available to my authors to answer any question that they might have about their process that they're in and shepherding them along. I do office hours every month with my clients, and am constantly teaching them new things and what to look out for and all of that. So teaching is kind of baked into what I do.
Yeah. We were talking before we hit record just about a lot of the questions that I have personally would love to be asking an agent or a mentor or something. Is this normal? What kind of things can I expect? What's realistic? What's unrealistic? So I'm sure that that is a big part of what you're doing with your authors. So let's talk a little bit. I think the women on this call, the women in the writer's block, a lot of them have writing aspirations for traditionally getting published, working on proposals and that kind of thing. So what are you looking for when you're looking at a proposal, considering taking on a new client? What are some of the things that you're specifically looking for?
Thankfully, I have an assistant, and so I've trained her to look for these things so
That's
that I
good.
only get kind of the ones that come to the rise to the top, which is great. So she gets to write all the rejection letters, and bless her soul, because I don't like doing that. But what I'm looking for is stellar writing, a very unique idea, and then that has to be balanced with, can you reach your audience? And I have taken on clients with smaller audiences if the other two things are high, like it's a three-pronged stool. So great writing, great unique idea, and low platform. I can sometimes take someone like that on. I too am constrained by the reality of publishers asking for those numbers. So I know that if I go into someone with a lower platform, I just know it's going to be a tougher ride. And I also know that my time is limited, so I've got to be very careful about some of those lower platform projects, because I just don't have the if I see that the person is a self-starter, then and that I'm more apt to do that, but I can't build a platform for somebody else. So I have to see that whatever that looks like, whether it's on social media or with an email list, I actually tend toward the email list. I need to see that the person is reaching their audience and the audience knows who they are and love what they create.
Hmm. I remember reading an article that you wrote where you talked about that idea of the author platform being broken. And you talked just now a little bit, touched on it about the social media numbers versus an email list. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? I mean, I know you're in that system, and like you said, you're confined by numbers as well, but I don't know, what kind of encouragement could you give writers who feel discouraged because numbers are kind of subjective sometimes, like what's big and
Yeah,
where should I be aiming?
I remember in the earlier days when I was publishing, when it was really about a good idea and a well executed idea. And it was really around the time of Michael Hyatt's book about platform. And right prior to that, the big publishers were talking about branding. And that was like 2007, 2008. And then platform came out. And then all Christian publishers just kind of went crazy about it. Um, and I feel like it's unfair, especially with social media numbers, because like one podcast that you might want to listen to is called Writing Off Socials. It's been really helpful for me to listen to that. Because I too believe that social media doesn't translate into sales. Um, People get, free content when they're doing this, when they're scrolling, and it takes a lot for them to make a decision to buy something from a creator, because a creator on social media is primarily making their money through scrolling, through people, through their audience, through the numbers that they have, through advertising revenue and things like that, but they're not really making it off products. And so that's why, as a agent, I look far more at those intimate connections, which consist of email distribution lists. Substack can be that way. Podcast listeners, anything, YouTube, anything that connotes or creates a relationship between you and the audience. I weigh those more heavily than the other, because I remember talking to a big publisher, and they were talking about how they had poured a lot of money into an influencer that had 1 million Instagram followers, and her sales were terrible and they got burned. And I almost was like, I told you so, because people are not committed to you. But versus people who are on my email list and get my Thursday emails every week, those people love what I have to say. I've created an audience, a congregation, so to speak. And they won't buy all my books, but they're more apt to buy them if I'm not always being a salesperson and I'm giving them great content all the time. So that's a really long answer to your question, but that's where I land.
No, I think it's helpful. I hope it's encouraging to writers here, because I think we do feel that tension of the the sense of we need to be doing more. We need to be out on social media. We need to be building a platform there, but that it doesn't always compute into even likes or comments or, and like you said, ultimately sales. So finding that channel that is profitable, is successful for you, is really, really key. So um, do you, I've asked this before, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Are you all looking for is there a number? Is there kind of a standard number that agents might be looking for? Like once your email list is at X amount, you've got a platform.
I've been hearing around the space initially that it was 50,000 followers across all platforms. And so that would include your email distribution list, your Instagram, Twitter, X, Facebook, all of that. Now I'm hearing 100,000. So
Wow.
it's very discouraging. I remember talking to, as an author, I was talking to an editor at a big house. And just to give you an example of my own following, I have about 100,000 followers across all platforms, maybe a little more. And then I also have a podcast that's daily with 5 million listens. So I kind of thought, okay, I've arrived. And she said to me, she said, your platform is woefully small. And I was like, if mine is
Wow.
small, then everybody's is small, because that is ridiculous. And so I
Wow.
hope and pray that publishers will begin to really think like literature more, and think in terms of value to the kingdom. The other sad and frustrating thing that I have found is that my friends who have gone over to New York and are in secular publishing houses, they have said beyond a shadow of a doubt that secular houses are not as interested in platform as Christian houses are. And that makes no sense to me, but I have seen it play out every single time as an agent. I'm trying to place a project and I get a no because the platform's not there.
Wow.
Ah, I know.
That's so frustrating
So
and
frustrating.
sad. That's such a sad kind of take on where the Christian publishing world is. I was just listening to a podcast with the Jenkins, the creators of The Chosen, and he was just talking about stewarding his gifts well. And he's the name of his company is Five and Two, referring to the 5 loaves and 2 fishes in the feeding of the 5,000, and that the Lord impressed upon his heart, I do impossible math.
Mhm,
That was so
mhm.
encouraging to me, just as a writer, thinking of like, we just have to trust those numbers to the Lord. He does impossible math. Be faithful and stewarding your gifts and your words well. Yeah, Carrie asked in the comments question, aren't most of the quote unquote Christian publishers owned by bigger secular publishers? Is that true?
It's about half and half. So like the Baker Group is not, Harvest House Publishers is not, um, Kriegel is not, I'm trying to think of some other ones. IVP is not. Um, so yeah, it's about half and half.
Interesting. Yeah, hopefully they'll catch on to the platform thing then. The other ones, we
I
can
hope
we
so,
can hope
because I
and
think it's
pray.
silly. I mean, I've heard before this statement that if Eugene Peterson was trying to get published today, he couldn't. And that just breaks my heart. I just think that's really unfair.
Yeah, I agree. Well, speaking of those kind of things, what are, regardless of platform size, for authors who are just wanting to just steward their work and their words well, what are some ways that they can kind of stick out? You talked earlier about that three-legged stool. Great idea, great writing. Maybe if the platform numbers aren't there, what are some ways we can like amp up the good writing and the good ideas to stand out?
On the good writing side, I would say really concentrate on killing your weak verbs. The am, is, was, were, seem, state of being verbs. I can't tell you how I will often just walk away if I see too
Mm.
many wases and ises. It's like it's just lazy writing and it shows that you haven't learned your craft. So you can always get better at that. And then in terms of idea, um, there are a lot of the same Christian books being written over and over again. And I receive them all the time. And my assistant will say, if she's not sure about a project, she'll say, I think this has been done before. It looks like a good project, but my hunch is that it's been done before. And then we'll go on Amazon and we'll see 20 books about the same thing. Um, so you have to have kind of a prophetic look at the future. And also, just in terms of hearing the Holy Spirit, um, I think there's a beautiful creativity that happens when we are interacting with the scripture and hearing the Holy Spirit. There's something new and dynamic that happens there. What I see a lot of is a regurgitation of all the things we hear from the pulpit, all the things that we hear from the same books, same authors. We kind of create these silos of ideas, and it's important that we pull away and do kind of like what Cal Newport talks about in digital minimalism, is to pull away from all of that noise and begin to produce original thought and original work.
When you said earlier a lot of regurgitation of same ideas, are there topics that you're seeing, like maybe a couple topics that you're like, okay, let's hang this one up. This has been done.
There's a lot of You Go Girl books out there. There's a lot right now. We're seeing a glut of anxiety, depression, mental health books. And most publishers are now saying we don't want them unless it's by an expert. So just randos that talk about mental health is great. And I think it's awesome that we have those voices, but in terms of publishing, they're just not accepting unless you're a counselor or something like that. Um, I think we're kind of over the wave of deconstruction in terms of how many books are out there about that, whether pro or con. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think going forward, you are still seeing a lot of culture war stuff that needs to be talked about. I do think that there's probably still more room for uh, Christian nationalism and critique of it going on both sides. Seems like that's still an okay thing to write about in terms of publishability. Um, And yeah, I mean, there's some evergreens, parenting mommy books are still doing fairly well. Devotionals are still doing fairly well. Those are evergreen topics that are, or formats that seem to be always bought. May not be high income, but they are needed. Like Our Daily Bread is always, acquiring people doing devotionals and things like that. So I wish I was more of a prophet in that area, but that's just kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. I- Excuse me. My fan just kicked on at highest speed. I'm gonna turn it off really quick.
I hear you. I don't hear it actually. I don't know if you guys hear it, but I don't hear it. But I'm glad you don't want to
Sometimes
be distracted.
I know, and it's connected to a switch upstairs. So if my son turns his light on, it turns my fan on downstairs. So anyway, sorry. Excuse me about that. Um, Yeah, so that's really helpful. I think it's helpful to think too, like if anyone here is listening now or in the future, just to be thinking about like that idea, coming up with that idea that is maybe evergreen or timeless or really now, like you said, like some of those political issues and things like that are things people are talking about, and maybe more could be said in the girl empowerment stuff. We've said it all,
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe.
let's see. Let's talk a little bit about mentorship and some of the common mistakes and misconceptions that maybe some of your mentees have had when it comes to that author agent relationship. Are there ways that maybe we could go into those kind of situations with a little bit more knowledge, maybe a little better expectations for what to expect?
I would say first, um, err on the side of relational capital. I get a lot of cold calling asks for mentorship, and I always say no because I don't have any relationship with them. It needs to be birthed out of that kind of, connection somehow. It can be very off-putting and stressful for someone to come to you and say, I just feel like, especially if they say, I feel like the Lord has told me that you're my mentor.
Mm,
It's just a lot of pressure.
hmm.
And
See that.
also keep in mind that like during those 10 years of obscurity, I didn't have a mentor, but I did in the sense of I was reading all those writing books and I was constantly honing my craft and I was writing all of those words. And um, anytime there was a lecture, anytime, this was before internet and, at the library or whatever, I was just always there. So if you don't have a physical mentor, we can still be mentored by the greats and learn through great writing books and like the Writer magazine and things like that. So, um, yeah, and I think too, like in a formal mentoring relationship, it would be good to write down those expectations because that can also go sour really fast if you're not able to give what's necessary, or maybe there's just too much needed and you don't have time, or what it might be. But if you've already defined it, like saying, I will submit to you 300 words of writing every week. Well, that would be great. Like that's really easy to do and important, and it is measurable rather than I want you to help me write my book,
Right. Yeah.
which is hard to define.
In your mentoring relationships, it sounds like you're mostly working on craft, right? You're kind of creating a situation where it's like, let's get to be better writers. Is that how you
Ac-
see that?
Actually, it's about half and half. It's half craft and half business and promotion and book selling. Because if you don't sell your book, you won't be asked to write again. And some of my authors are running against that. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I kept trying to tell them that you think writing the book is hard. It is hard, but you spend a lot more time promoting it than you did writing it. And no one believes me. But then they get there and they're like, oh my gosh, that's true. And then they suddenly are more aware and they want to learn about how to promote it. So I talk about it half and half because if you're serious about writing and you want to keep doing it, you have to have good business practices and you have to be teachable in both areas.
So let me ask you, since you are on both sides of that coin of author and literary agent and mentor, how are you able to promote and market as many books as you are outputting in a year? How does that look like for you?
For this year, in a calendar year, there will have been 4 that I released, and that's too many. It's just way too many. I have one releasing today, actually.
Wow, congrats.
Congratulations. This book released today. This is 3 of 4 in a year. And I have
Wonderful.
kind of come
Congrats.
to the conclusion that I have done 1,000 things to launch a book and made myself sick. And there's been times where I'm so burned out, I'll do very little. And I don't see much difference between the two. So now I'm kind of going at about 50%. I'm like, I will do things. I will touch my list. I will do some socials. I will do some asks for, hey, if you've read the book, if you could review it, that'd be really great. I will do all of those things, but I'm at about half of what I could do because I've learned that at a certain threshold, you're just becoming annoying, and that doesn't really sell books.
I've also heard that you should kind of plan on living in the cycle of that book post release. Like, is it 1 to 2 years of, I mean, in a normal circumstance when you're not releasing for a year, I mean, would you say that's like, well, I should just ask, how long do you think that looks like after releasing a book?
Yeah, I think you should always be aware of it. The way I kind of deal with it, since I'm a high output author, is if there's something in the news or if something happens with that book, then I will go ahead and promote again. So I just kind of let the market dictate that. Or if I'm on a podcast and if I'm on a big podcast, I'll see a jump in sales and I might do a little bit more to kind of keep that going. So yeah, about a year out, but I have some titles from a couple of years ago that are still that I will still promote and are still selling because they're really based on felt need. So one is Love, Pray, Listen, Parenting Your Wayward Adult Kids with Joy. That's an evergreen topic, and most parents who have wayward kids are brokenhearted and they need a book. And so
Mhm.
that's one that I will talk about a lot. Or at the beginning of the year, I have a book called the 90-Day Bible Reading Challenge. Well, it's a great thing to start a year with, is to read the Bible in 90 days. So then I might promote that in January, or my assistant will help me promote that in January.
Yeah, so kind of always keeping your ears out for opportunities where you can plug your book. Um, what are some ways that, you know, maybe um, lesser known ways that authors might be like forgetting to take advantage of this channel of opportunity to promote your book? Are there some ways that we're like we're accustomed to doing social media posts and email newsletters, podcasts, that kind of thing? Are there some other ways that maybe we've left off the table?
Um, if you have an assistant or a friend who wants to help you, asking libraries to stock your book is a really great side hustle. And it also expands your brand and your reach because you're getting into libraries and people, that's one book with many reads. So that's lovely. The Goodreads platform is also a really great place to have a presence where you're reviewing books. And then when you have a book come out, it's really nice. You can do giveaways that way. And it's a place for readers. So it's a really nice place to settle in. Probably the little known but best technique that I have found in selling books is to speak. And so if you are a nonfiction writer who happens to be a speaker or a speaker who writes nonfiction, I always sell tons of books at the back of the room. And I also use those opportunities to build my email list. So speaking, I heard from my mentor back in 2002. I said, what's the thing that sells books? And she says, speaking, and it has not changed. The reason it's not changed is that when someone gets to know you and they hear your voice and they experience you, they will want more from you. And that's why podcasting can be great because it's very intimate. It's in your ear, or YouTube can be the same. Someone can see your face and they can hear your voice. or email distribution because they're hearing your writing voice on a consistent basis, once a week, twice a month, whatever thing you're doing. So anything that fosters a relationship is going to be a high touch way to sell books.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Um, and I think that's what you were talking about earlier about being that connection, that touching, so to speak, of getting that interaction and that engagement with your listener. And probably public speaking is the best way. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're you're not some mystery voice behind the screen. So well, I want to just offer this time and let the ladies on the call, if they have any thoughts or questions that kind of been rolling through, if you have anything you would like to add or ask Mary, to let you guys do that now.
I have a question. Um, Speaking of platform and building your platform, you have books from like all different types. I mean, I first became familiar with you with your the nonfiction book about building the Christian home you never had,
Mm-hmm.
and then went into some of your fiction, and like you have such a broad spectrum of topics. Do you find that there's like an umbrella of things that you talk about? Or, I mean, do your readers just, they know your voice and they know kind of the perspective you come from, and that's enough to keep, because you must have more than just one specific narrow reader. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And I am a little bit of an outlier that way, and started my career writing both fiction and nonfiction. And so it already was established, so I was able to do it. That's why I worked really hard on branding and finding the Restory brand, because that really truly encapsulates everything that I do. You had this other story, whether it's a parenting story or personal walk with Jesus story or a trauma story, and Jesus wants to help heal you. A little story about that, to use the metaphor. When I was writing parenting books back in the early 2000s, I did it to get my foot in the door. It was not my idea to write those books. My agent said, you really should be writing parenting books. And he had some connections with folks in the industry about it. And eventually I said, actually, that book you're talking about, I said, I'm not writing a parenting book. I cry all the time. This is my parenting style, is crying and asking Jesus for help because I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, the only book I'm going to write is for those of us who don't want to duplicate the homes that we were raised in. And he said, well, you need to write that book. And so then I had a branding expert who was gifted to me to help me. And he said, you need to brand yourself as a Christian parenting expert, which was the most laughable thing to me ever. And I pushed against it because every time I would go and speak to audiences, I would always switch back somehow to, you need to get right with Jesus and have him change your heart and heal your past. That is the central message of everything. So even in my fiction, I'm writing a book right now called The Healing Garden, and it's fiction, but it's all about healing from the past and having a new story. So I think there are ways that you can encapsulate it in a branding statement that helps. But I also can see myself as a working writer. So I have said yes to projects that may be out of brand, like writing a devotional for Thomas Nelson where I'm not named, because I need the money. So there's that side of things too.
Could you tell us a little bit more about branding? Like what does that mean when you say that to a writer?
I mean, the very simplest explanation is when someone hears your name, what do they think of? And so I don't think of myself as a brand. It's just what people think of me when they think of me as a writer. And they'll usually think about those things of, well, she loves to see people set free. And so I think we can get really stuck in branding. I think it can mess with our creativity too. So you just have to be careful and follow the Holy Spirit. All of my branding journeys, I've had some different ones along the way. Restory is the most recent one, but it was initiated by the Lord. It was not like, oh my gosh, I have to have a brand. It was like, wow, I feel like this doesn't fit me anymore because God has set me increasingly free. And so I'm going to listen to him and see what comes of this listening. And part of that listening was asking my audience the question, what do you think of when you think of me? And almost always there's something about freedom in there. And that nobody came up with Restory. That dropped into my head from the Lord, but it fit all the things that people were saying about me.
I love that. I have taught some branding classes as well. And that is my definition of branding, is it's a shortcut for the brain. So it is what, like when you think about a brand, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And so it is kind of making those grooves, those channels in our brains align with what we want to be known for. And so that's really cool. And then you can let your visuals line up with that intention of your heart of what you want to be known for. Did you mention story brand? Did I hear you say that?
No, but that's another way to go about it too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
So, hi, Mary. Thanks for being here. I am a traditionally published author without an agent. That's just how I decided to start out and see how it went. And then it has worked. Now I'm in negotiation for my second book. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on trying to negotiate a little bit more. Like right now, we're negotiating about what the book will be about. Like we have certain things in common, and now they want to tweak it this way, and I want to tweak it this way. We're just working on it. It's very pleasant and whatnot. But what are your thoughts on basically asking for a better percentage or more control over international or anything? Do you do that for the second book, or do you just kind of keep your mouth shut until you have 10 books?
You absolutely do that for the second book. And it really depends on what your output was for the first book, if you earned your advance back and all of that. And if you were successful on that first book, then it's very normal. And as an agent, I would ask for higher percentages and a higher advance that's commensurate with how many books you sold. So let's say you got a $2,000 advance for your first contract and you moved 2,000 copies, because usually the advance is kind of like how many copies they think you're going to move. And so you moved 3,000 copies. So then it's very normal to say, well, because I've proven that I can move 3,000 copies, I would like my advance more. And usually the percentages, they can start at like 15, 17, 19. Sometimes they'll start way down at 12. Mostly I get 18, 20, 22, and those are at different thresholds. Sometimes I can get 20, 22, 24. So like if you, up to 20% if you sell 5,000, up to 22% if you sell 10,000 or more, and up to 24% if you break out and sell 20,000 or more. Like those kinds of things, you can always mess and finagle with those figures and ask. I always ask for higher percentages just because it benefits my authors. And but to back up a little bit, I have an author who her first book just came out this last week, and they already want more books from her because she's building a series. And she wrote, I said, hey, you got two more book, an offer for two more books. And she wrote back and said, well, why isn't the advance more? And I said, because there's no sales history. They can't guess that you're going to earn this out. And so I can't really ask for more because we have no idea what your sales history will be. Now, if they're a big author that consistently moves 50,000 copies, and it's very easy for me to say, I need a higher advance on this because we know we can move these copies. Does that make sense?
Yes. We did the first print run was 4,000 copies, and we sold out in 6 months. And we've gone into a second printing.
Okay, so you can definitely ask for more.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
Thank you very much.
Yay, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mary?
I have a question. So the title of today's chat is the agent-author relationship. So how do newbies go about building a relationship with you. I mean, I go to writers conferences and what have you. And what's your process for acquiring new authors?
It's varied actually. So I will teach at writers conferences. They don't pay very well, to be honest. So I've had to like look at my time and be like, I don't want $400. I actually could stay home and earn more than that. So I haven't been doing that circuit as much. I've actually acquired several clients through my intensives, and people that are willing to fly across to France and, suffer for Jesus while eating a baguette. It's, really hard. I actually think I got like 6 clients that way. So there is something to be said about meeting someone face to face. And then of course, the other way is just writing a stellar query and a standout proposal that catches my assistant Kristen by surprise. And to be honest, there's not that many. Really good proposals stand out. Really clever, well-written queries stand out. Mostly we get drivel. So do your best. You only have that one chance to make that first impression.
So your assistant will read the queries or the proposals and say, yeah, take this or don't take that, or take a second look at this.
Yes, she'll be the one that says take a second look, but then there'll also be like industry professionals who will approach me. Like I've had a couple of my clients come this way where an editor will say, I know that she's losing her agent. I think you two would be a great match. And so in that case, I tell them to write it in the query that this editor recommended. And then Kristen will like look at it harder because there's already a publishing person interested in them. And that's another like really great way to get an agent, is be like, oh my gosh, I have this contract. I really would like to have an agent. Most agents will be like, okay, I will now negotiate it for you. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty easy yes for an agent.
Yeah, because a lot of that work's been done.
Yeah.
That work you would normally do. Yeah.
Right. Good question though.
Is there a place to look for agents who are accepting new clients? Is there like an online place, a book to look through, that kind of thing?
Yeah, the Christian Writers Market Guide comes out every year, and they always email me and ask what I'm asking for, so I know it's up to date. So it's a physical book. I think there's a database involved with it too, like if you pay extra, and it might like update every year, so that might be a better investment than just buying the book. But yeah, all of those Christian ones are listed, and as well as like freelancing opportunities and which publishing houses take non-agented material. There's not very many, but a few do. And so you can directly query them.
Yeah, that's good to know. Well, we have just a few minutes left. I have a speed round, lightning round of 3 final questions for you, Mary. So we were talking earlier about craft and kind of letting books be your mentor. What's one book that you think every writer, we're all Christian writers here, specifically, that you think we should read?
I guess I would go back to On Writing by Stephen King, because I feel like a lot of nonfiction writers don't know how to tell a story, and he is a story writer. So I have often referred my clients there. Another one that's on that line is Scene and Structure by Jack Bickham. He teaches you how to write a scene, and you need it whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. And another one is by Raymond Obstfeld, A Novelist's Essential Guide to Crafting Scenes. These are all things that I think people don't know innately how to do, and they have to learn how to do it. And I had to learn how to do it because I was going to capture my audience through storytelling. And even though I'm writing nonfiction, I'm constantly telling stories because it grabs the reader.
Yeah, I sensed a theme. There's a theme there of
Yes.
Scenes, right? I
Yes.
think you need to get better at writing scenes, both fiction and nonfiction. Second question is can you share a story of maybe the hardest no you had to say to an author, and maybe why?
I actually it's going to answer your question weirdly, but I said yes to an author recently, and I really love her, and I really love her story, and I really believe that if she can get a book out there, it will do very, very well. But it's memoir-esque, and I have never been able to sell a memoir, even though I myself have written one and got it sold. I mean, I didn't, my agent sold it. So my hard no was, I shopped it widely and no one said yes. And so I just had to, so they're going to take it somewhere, they have a relationship with another publisher. I'm like, you be blessed. I hope it gets published, but I couldn't sell it.
So is memoir harder to
Oh
sell?
gosh. Yes. Any agent that you talk to would, in the Christian realm, would say it's almost impossible. In the secular realm, there's a lot more room for it, but I don't know why. It's weird because I actually really love memoir, but they're hard to sell. Now, I did sell a biography that is doing very well. It's called Catherine Barnwell. She's this, it was sold to Lifeway, and it's out now and running for awards and all of that. She's a missionary from the UK who is the mother of all Bible translation. Like, she pioneered Bible translation and pioneered Indigenous people translating the Bible back in the 60s when it wasn't a thing. And she's got, she had to flee from rebels, and it's an amazing story. It was first featured in Christianity Today, and I'm so grateful that that book is out there. So I can sometimes sell biographies, but it's hard to sell memoir.
Interesting. Okay. Well, tell us too, being as well read and well written as you are, what's something you're currently reading or studying or learning from that you would like to pass on?
Well, I'm just a few thousand words away from finishing my church bewilderment book. And so a lot of my reading, and also my husband and I are teaching a class on it for the next 6 weeks. So a lot of my reading is in that place. Books like A Church Called Tove by Scott McKnight, and When Narcissism Comes to Church by Chuck DeGroat. And so I'm reading a lot of religious systems that harm people kind of books. They're real uplifting, let me tell you. Not very fun, but they have been important in the research of learning to help people through their own church hurt.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share your new book that just released today, and then also tell us where we can find you and stay connected with your work.
Yeah, you can find me at marydemuth.com, and then prayeveryday.show is my daily podcast. It's been going on 7 years now, like a crazy person. marydemuth.literary.com is my literary agency. And then my book is called The Freedom of Surrender, 40 Devotions for a Joyful Life in Christ. This is the first book that I've released. This is with IVP that has my art in it. So every one of the devotions has a piece of art connected to it. And it was started, kind of an interesting thing is I started painting for Lent about 10 years ago. And so a very long story, but eventually people started asking me, will you sell your art? So I started selling it on Etsy. Really helpful around COVID when I could not speak. And so that kind of saved me for a while. And then this book came out of 2 years ago, painting every day my surrendered prayers that the Lord was asking me to surrender. And so this is 40 ways of surrendering, and each one has a piece of art connected. I'm a little insecure about it, to be honest, just because I don't consider myself a commercial artist. This is just something I do for joy. So it's a little weird to have it out there and in a book form, like, I painted the cover. It's just so fun. So it's a great book for giving a gift for Christmas, because it's hard to see, but it's a smaller format. So my book that came out just earlier this year is The Most Overwhelmed Women in the Bible, and you can see that it's just a different size. It's just a little smaller.
Yeah, but beautiful. Love it.
Yes.
And that's one cover you probably really didn't have to fight about, right?
Exactly. I think I like it. Oh, I did it.
Well, Mary, thank you so much. This has been very educational and fun, and we really appreciate your time and being here with us on the Writers Block today.
Thanks so much. And you guys have a great time and keep writing and don't give up. And it's going to be good. God's going to be good.
That's right. Right on. Thank you again. Bye-bye.